the outset, I feel the need to point out something that I think the casual observer might miss from some of the comments. The Dobbs decision did not criminalize abortion. The Dobbs decision didn't do anything to affect the legal status of abortion other than to return the decision, the primary decision on abortion, back to the states. It concluded that this has always been an issue that was before the states prior to Roe versus Wade and its progeny. The Supreme Court in Dobbs simply undid Roe and said this is a decision that most of the time, that is, unless we're dealing with something in the District of Columbia at a military installation using government funds or something like that, isn't normally going to be federal action. And so they returned it back to where it was. Now, states have been more or less out of this arena for about 50 years. They had been out of the arena for about 50 years, as most abortions occurring in America couldn't be meaningfully restricted in light of Roe versus Wade and its progeny. States are getting back into that business now after it had been usurped by a judicial oligarchy of sorts for nearly half a century. And so, yes, states will handle this differently, but states handle many things differently. Everything from occupational licensing to what procedures might be performed in certain states, even the criminal laws of one state differ from those of another. Those laws are made by men and women elected by the citizens of those states. Sometimes those laws can end up having unforeseen consequences, sometimes tragic ones. Those laws can be changed from time to time. But it's important to focus on what this is about and what it is not. It is, at the end of the day, something that is in the hands of the American people. This is part of what having a democratically elected government means. It's what it focuses on. I've heard several mentions made to the idea that there's suddenly going to be a national abortion ban, a federal abortion ban enacted. To my knowledge, Republicans who now control the House haven't even pushed for a vote on that elsewhere. Same can't be true of the Born Alive Protection Act. It's a different circumstance. When a child is born alive, I would hope we could all agree, regardless of what your religious, moral, or policy feelings about abortion are, I would hope we could all agree that once a child is born, there are all kinds of protections, and that allowing someone to be killed carries all kinds of other ramifications. Ms. Ford, I'd like to start with you. I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about the marriage penalties that exist in our current tax code and our social safety net at the federal level, and what harmful effects they might have on things like family formation. How do they harm, for example, married couples with children in a way that doesn't affect other families?
Yeah, I'd like to start by pointing out that marriage penalties in the safety net, which exist primarily in a program explicitly like the Earned Income Tax Credit, you can earn thousands more if you are unmarried and have children versus if you are married and have children. But they're also implicitly throughout the rest of our programs. For instance, if you don't declare the partner who you are not married to within the home, you can receive thousands more in SNAP benefits or TANF benefits or any other number of benefits. And the effect that we see that this has had on our culture is within the unmarried birth rate. We have the highest percentage of children living in single-parent homes in the world. It is about a quarter of U.S. children live in single-parent homes as compared to 7% around the world.
Are you suggesting we have thus incentivized out-of-wedlock birth and childbearing?
The information seems to be falling that way because when we track CDC data, if you're looking at college-educated women, fewer than 10 or 11% have children out of wedlock. That's roughly similar to what was happening in the 1960s. When you're looking at less educated women, it comes close to 60%. It really does hit on education levels and income levels whether a child is going to be born out of wedlock. And we know very clearly from the data that there is an impact to having two parents in the home. This is why Melissa Kearney's recent book, The Two-Parent Privilege, was published. She is not right-leaning. This is following the data. There is a huge benefit to having two parents in the home with the child.
How does that contribute to the perpetuation or even exacerbation of existing inequities along racial, economic and other demographic lines.
We know that if there is a single mom or a single parent who is raising her child alone, she is much more likely to experience economic hardship, and it is much more likely for her children to experience intergenerational poverty. The 60 years that aid to dependent children with families was run in this country showed that economic outcome. This program, which provided cash assistance to mothers, by the mid-1990s, 9 in 10 women were unemployed, 1 in 7 children were on the program, and after it was reformed to focus on work, the out-of-wedlock birth rate stabilized. Women returned to work by nearly 20 points, and child poverty in this country dropped by 60%.
Human beings are rational actors, and when we incentivize the wrong things, sometimes we'll get those things, and those things can sometimes harm a lot of people, especially the most vulnerable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.